Yeah, the only day I could actually do that surgery was on a Friday. So the doctor usually doesn't do surgeries on Friday. And so he's like, I guess there's like certain days he will do it. Not like next week is a religious holiday, so he wasn't going to be able to do it. And then he said, get there at noon and I'll get you in there before 3. So you aren't allowed to eat for the whole day. And I had to stop drinking water at 8. So I got there at noon, and luckily they give you an IV so you're not so thirsty. And then I've never had a doctor ask. He's like, hey, can I pray with you? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so he prayed, and then he did the surgery early at like 2, and it was over in a half an hour. And then I had crutches, but you need the exact measured crutches. Like I had 5'10" crutches, and you need to have, I'm like 6 foot barely. So I got those. What's that? Yeah, they put this mask on me like, here's your oxygen. I knew it wasn't oxygen because I could smell like cinnamon flavor. I was like, this is going to knock me out. And I didn't remember anything. And then you wake up.
Have to get like 2 times the dose.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, because like when I'm at the dentist and they numb my mouth, I can still feel it.
Yeah, like Novocaine and stuff. Yeah, I agree with you. I've noticed that before. So I'm glad I was able to do it because you guys just had the Paris Hilton trauma video online, which you still can watch. It's about trauma in rich people. I've never seen much videos about trauma in rich people before. So it was interesting. It just came out a few months ago. And yeah, it does have like adolescents and teens. And then today we finish up with like some of the adolescents and social dimension. And I go down to the private practice. I end up not missing a day. I parked right over there though, like right next to the building. Hopefully they don't tow my car. Because I normally park a half mile away by the cop's office. So it gets into like, well, yeah, some of the adolescents, which I'm sure you knew growing up, they say with delinquency, so sometimes there's gangs, and people say differentiate between gangs and other peer groups. Like nowadays, I think there's like MS-13, if you've ever heard of them. That's a big one in California.
Say that again?
There's a gang called MS-13. I don't know how to pronounce it. They're from El Salvador. So Malva Sutra Trece. So, and then obviously like Crips, Bloods, and the other. Some of the risk factor is like poverty and little attachment to people and social institutions. So that's some of the challenges that come with it. Adolescents have a developmental need to associate with peer groups. So if you don't have a lot of direction growing up, it's easy to be like, man, I feel welcome and accepted here, and I have a mission in life, and I do everything to get money for this group of guys. And so most members are like 14 to 18, and you can go as old as 30, all throughout the United States and sometimes the prison system. And then female gang involvement is reported by law enforcement agencies to be like only about 6 or 8% of females. So it's a little lower in females, but there's still some involvement. There was something in schools. Oh yeah, that's right. After watching our documentary about paper tigers and the School for Trauma-Informed Care, I thought of this in context with that. So developmental mismatch in the transition from elementary to middle school. If it's poor goodness of fit. So like sometimes kids go from a really good elementary school to a bad high school, and they get bored easily and don't even want to go, or vice versa. They go from a bad grade school into a really good high school, and it's hard to keep up. So it's easier to drop out. Also, there's that small school too large and impersonal and bureaucratic. It's kind of why I like Central State with like the smaller classes. And at Ohio State University, you have like 200 people in some of your classes. It's crazy. I don't even know how the teachers keep up with that. You also go from like being the top dog. Well, people describe it this way: the little fish in a big pond, and then big fish in a little pond, to being a little fish in a big pond. Because in like high school and college, usually there's more people and less schools because it's not like forced to go to college by the feds. There's also sometimes a shift in your peer groups that you hang out with. There's also still puberty going on. So like 18, 19, 20, concerns about body image, and then also decreased dependency on parents. So after the age of 18, sometimes you can like get your own credit card and your own car, your own house. You got to be careful with it, but you're an adult, so they let you make those adult decisions if you can get a job to pay for them. So also there's a little bit about the high school dropouts, and one stat that's interesting. I think it's like 35% of Americans have a bachelor's degree that's finished, but sometimes half of us start and try college and just like life happens and you get a job. But only about a third of Americans finish their bachelor's degree. So that's why it's such a big deal to, whatever it takes. And it gets harder and harder the later you are. Like I have the example of my wife, because life happened. She's 35 now. She's literally a senior this semester. She'll have 90 credit hours. So she really wants to finish it. And we're having another baby. So it gets hard, as we're both trying to work and take care of the kids. And she takes about 6 hours of school every semester. So it's easy to get caught up in life, but it's more necessary now to have that education to kind of like differentiate you from other people. Now with homelessness, I worked at Lighthouse Youth Services, which was specifically for homeless youth from ages 14 to 18. We also had a homeless shelter for ages 18 to 24. A lot of times the characteristics are that they have been physically or sexually abused in the home in the year previous to their homelessness, and that's why they ran away. Then sometimes there's substance dependence to deal with the trauma of that abuse and even criminal activity to pay for the lifestyle, and sometimes even thoughts of suicide or actual suicide. So approximately 2 million youth are homeless in the United States, like kids that, go undocumented, so to speak, because their Lighthouse would let them come in as early as the age of like 12, 13 and work with like the Child Protective Services. Now, this one, I wanted to get your all's take on this, is the research from the author, and this is where they say adolescence of color. So an ethnic identity relates to a stronger sense of purpose, self-confidence, and social competence. Minority youth often confront living in two different cultures. You have the dominant culture, like around here in America, or Xenia, the country folk, and then a culture shaped by your ethnic or racial status. How do you feel about that? Is that's just kind of what the author wrote, and I wanted to get some thoughts because this is his research. Also, adolescents of color have two sets of peers, one at school and another in their neighborhoods. Does that make sense? I don't know as much, so that's why I'm going to ask. And then finally, immigrant adolescents must address the issue of belonging versus estrangement. Critical to their adjustment is reliance on their earlier primary group's cultural values, which can provide a foundation for their adjustment. So I guess the middle one is saying if you have peer relationships, one at school and one in the neighborhood. Or the first one, living in two different cultures. Do you ever notice that, like living in the American culture and then also living in a culture shaped by your ethnic or racial status?
So basically what it's trying to say is when we're around two different people, we act different.
Okay.
Is that what it's showing?
I feel like it has something that way because I've even had Dr. Allen, who's the head of the social work department, describe it that way. That like, yeah, because it is a different. I mean, even I am not a minority youth, but I know like living and talking and speaking in the business world was totally different of like living and talking and hanging out with my friends too. You know what I mean? And like you have to use like the proper language and the proper English, and I get that part, but I'm wondering too sometimes if there isn't as much excitement about like college education or two different peer relationships, one in school and then another in your neighborhood.
Then I do feel like, kind of in a way, when it comes down to school, you have, I'm not gonna say you have to put ownership, but you have to present yourself as good in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're in your neighborhood, you can be yourself. You can.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes in your neighborhood, you can't always be yourself.
Okay. Which I lived in Nicaragua for 7 months 20 years ago. So the last one I can kind of relate to immigrant, but I wasn't permanent immigrant there. But I was like the belonging versus estrangement because I was clearly a white boy in the middle of Nicaragua and I stood out. And at the same time, I also wanted to belong and be part of that community and contribute and help out and learn their culture. So I still relied on my own cultural values. And, you know, luckily, a lot of our base cultural values go back to survival. So, like, being able to get food on the table and a safe house to live in. And that did help me get a foundation for adjustment, like kind of connecting on the basic needs that we're all human and that we do have very many similarities. But there still was, again, that difference of like being from America and coming and living in Latin America. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw in pieces of discussion about that because I thought that would be interesting. And maybe we can have that as part of one of our next discussions. Any questions about that stuff or? I just wanted to make sure to highlight this being at a HBCU and knowing, you know, hearing if what the author is saying has any validity to it or if he's just like off his rocker. Like, I don't know, dude, you're kind of making stuff up. Where's your research on that, you know?
Well, I think you did get it. Like, as a color person, we do have to basically kind of like switch.
Mm-hmm.
So like when it was like in high school for me, we used to go on like field trips and we had to dress formal, you know, nice and everything and be
Mhm.
best behavior because I'm not saying everyone, but every white person look at us African Americans as ghetto, this and that.
Mhm.
So when we came formal and we spoke not smart, but you know when we talked the way how we talk, they were
Mhm.
shocked and looking like, oh well, I didn't know they know that. I did not know.
Right.
But when we're back at home, it's kind of like we're gonna always remain smart.
Mhm.
When we're back at home, we don't feel judged. We feel
Right.
comfortable. We could. So I
Yeah.
don't think the author where you guys back is not good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like we are, when you feel safe, you can be yourself. So that does make sense when you're in a safe space, like your home and your home neighborhood and whatnot. So, This one is the next bit about gender roles. So this I thought was interesting too. They say there's a shift towards androgyny, which means men are acting more like soft or no, women are taking more male characteristics and
females acting more masculine.
Yeah.
Males are acting more.
Right, and that's kind of what they're saying, which we do have this ability with in our United States culture. It's easier with, say, for example, I'm thinking hundreds of years ago now, or 1,000 years ago, you had the traditional roles where somebody would stay home and take care of the kids, and somebody had to go gather wood and gather food and like heat the house and feed everybody, and then somebody to like take care of everyone. So there was the traditional masculine feminine, and it's kind of dwarfed to where nowadays, because we don't have to heat the house with chopping down trees and wood, or I'm trying to think, or go kill a deer for food. I'm trying to think of what else they would have hunted, like in other countries, in Nicaragua and even El Salvador, or go out fishing, or like hunters and gatherers. We do have the ability, like we have single mom households, we have single dad households. We don't have two people doing it as much. And there's probably pros and cons of that. Like it does give economic freedom to both people, but at the same time, it's a shift towards like androgynous, to be androgynous. So a man's more like a woman and a woman's more like a man. It's kind of so greater diversity in gender roles and an increasing emphasis on equality and role sharing. And then with adolescent girls' development, it says, what on the way to womanhood does a girl give up? Oh, that's a book. Meeting at the Crossroads. So like the most significant factor related to depression is body image. So there we have a lot more TV and commercials, and women are looking at the billboards and put up ideas of what you should be. I mean, even men too, like everybody in the commercials are like in shape and buff and whatever. And there's depression related to that. Like we all have to be that way. And that's not the truth.
But I feel like more of the depression is body image. I feel like that more comes from, for example, a female is more masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to come out as, okay, I'm a stud, I'm this, I'm that. And everybody's judging her. So, not actually come out, but it's like everybody's opinion. Like, oh, I feel like a woman should not do this. Oh, I feel like a man should not do that. So, in their head, they're scared to come out as what they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the depression comes. And then when they finally meet the peers, like, okay, I accept you who you are, this, that, the third, then they start feeling comfortable. And when they finally come out, that's when all the hate comes in. And then they get depressed as in, should I have came out or should not have came out?
Right.
Everything was normal as is. So that's where the depression comes in.
Right.
And I personally feel like, don't nobody know what someone goes through for them to feel the way that they feel. Like, a female could probably been touched when she was little.
Mm-hmm.
And she probably likes, not like that, but that's something she likes. Like, she likes females now.
Right.
And she wants to define as a male. Like, you got some male who you just don't know what they went through for them to be the way that they went through. And I feel like we all should support them and let them know everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, safe for that. And like, that's in general, but me personally, when it comes down to general roles, I don't really care. I don't care about it, but it's like, if that's who you are, that's who you are. Like, I'm going to support you regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there shouldn't be a male supposed to do this, a female supposed to do that, because when I was taught growing up is a male's not always going to be there.
Right.
So when it comes to pumping the gas, I learned how to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my mom taught me how to pump the gas. When it comes to trash, I take it out.
Yeah, you earn your own way.
I'll have to learn how to change up the tires.
Uh-huh.
Because a man is not always going to be there.
Yeah.
But for a man, I think they should get taught, like, okay, this is how you do here, this is how you do that.
Uh-huh.
Because you never know, like, somebody, like you said, a male could be a single father.
Mm-hmm.
they might have a daughter, they might not, so they have to learn things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
And I feel like when males do learn like how to do hair, it's always, oh, he's the G word or
Right.
he's this, and it might not be the case.
Right, yeah, it's true. And I wonder sometimes if that's why we have less babies being born, because there is kind of that, a struggle between who is the one to take care of them or the dominant one or who's going to be the breadwinner. Whereas in the past, it was more defined, and now we're kind of having that shift towards androgyny and being androgynous. So we have less than 2 kids per couple being born. In America, it's like 1.5. I think in Europe, it's like 1.3 kids per man and a woman, so to speak. So who knows? It's always shifting. So you got to keep that discussion open. Oh, I feel like I just skipped one. Romance. So yeah, sexuality is a broad term including all of our sexual thoughts, feelings, values, beliefs, actions, and relationships, whereas sexual behavior is just the behavior including holding, so it doesn't have to be having sex. And then sexual identity is a major developmental task of adolescence. So you figure out who you like, what you like, and what your natural state is. Some of the other ones, some sexual behavior, they have sexual activity. There's oral sex. So over 40% of boys and girls report having received oral sex. That was in 2015. Adolescent rationale is that it's not as special, so you're still a virgin, etc. One stat with that, I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything on the bottom of it, is that with STDs, sometimes they think you don't spread STDs with oral sex, but if you do have a cold sore, which is herpes on your mouth, you can give herpes down there. So that's one misconception, and where we got to push education for people to not pass any STDs. Like it can go from mouth to mouth. And
I have a question. You said a cold sore is a sign of herpes?
It's herpes simplex 1. Yep, it's the same thing.
So my thing is, you don't want to get cold and stuff like that. You get a cold sore.
Yeah. Yep.
Is that like herpes?
Usually it is, yeah. Usually it's like a crack in the side. It's a form. Herpes simplex 1 is usually on your mouth. Herpes simplex 2 is on the genitals, but they can be passed all 4 ways. Like people can pass it through oral sex. You can pass it through kissing. You can pass it. So.
But my thing is, if you don't do anything sexual like kissing or anything like that, and when the weather changes, you get cold, you get a cold sore, that's still technically herpes?
It is, because herpes lives in your body forever. So you always have it. You could have it at birth from like your parents. About 80% of Americans have it. It's good to go to the doctor and they can like swab it and see what kind it is. And they have a medicine called like Valtrex, because most of us get it. When you're stressed out or when you're cold, the herpes virus lives in your nerve endings. So when your skin is like wind or sunburnt, also if you're stressed out from final exams, like because herpes lives in your nerve endings, it kind of bursts and then you'll get those on your face. So yes, it's something to be aware of that doctors can help with.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I thought you had to be like sexually active.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you can get it at birth. That's why it's one concern if mom has genital herpes that they want to do a C-section, because you can pass it to your baby if you do have genital herpes. So now with sexual identity, LGBT youth, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered, and questioning, teens disclosing their homosexuality with increasing regularity and doing so at a younger age. About 3.8% of the adult population identifies as gay or lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, and that was 6 years ago. When one twin is gay, the other is gay more than 50% of the time. So there's even a small genetic connection to that. Like you can be born with it. Some people say, like, I was born that way. It is about 5 to 8% of the population. And 2 to 3 times more likely to attempt suicide, because it is a very stressful event to be able to say that you've come out or your differences. So social workers need to be aware of that and work with youth on that it's okay. Now, sexual harassment, and yeah, we have a few slides left. 80% of adolescent boys and girls report being sexually harassed by their peers. And maybe it happens more on social media like Facebook and still like cyberbullying is what they're getting into there. Also, over half of the adolescents have been bullied online, and over 25% have been bullied repeatedly through cell phones or the internet. And then over half of the young people do not tell their parents about this experience. The most common form of cyberbullying occurs through instant messaging, with most victims in middle school. So, an instant messaging could be Facebook Instant Messenger, text messages, yeah, all of those, yeah. So it's just like another way that we communicate with people, and with that comes the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's the sad part, is that you still can mess with people. Some of the risks. So if you are bullied, you might be more likely to use substance use. So adolescents risk behaviors of substance use. There's greater violence in the schools, dating relationships, and at home. And then the after school programs are associated with improved school performance. So if you go to like a tutor after school, you're more likely to pass and finish high school. And also, this is an interesting stat, working 15 to 20 hours a week improves student self-esteem and your school satisfaction. And then working students' grade point averages are higher than those of non-working peers. But if you work more than 20 hours a week, it can mess up your schooling. So that's something to keep in mind. I used to work full-time in college, and I noticed it messed me up a little bit. When I cut back to 20 hours while I was taking 18 credit hours, I did better. Because it's too much. If you're working full-time and in school full-time, you can't do both. If you're working part-time and in school full-time, you can do that. So that's just kind of the risk. Now, pregnancy. Adolescent pregnancy, the U.S. is one of the highest teen birth rates of all developed countries. So we have a lot of teen pregnancies. 6% of all women aged 15 to 19 have a pregnancy, and 1/3 will have a repeat pregnancy within 2 years. The historical trend is that U.S. teen pregnancy rate has been declining over the past 20 years, and birth rates are higher among Hispanic and Black adolescents compared to white adolescents. One of the risk factors in that is poverty. Like if you don't have money to go out to the movies or like having stuff to do, then sex becomes your extracurricular activity, or you use that for entertainment instead of going. You don't think so?
You can correct me if I'm wrong after I say this, but as an African American student that went through poverty and like people go through it, it's not always sex. It's more because the other activities we do, like we go to the mall, we hang with friends, we do different things, not just sex. I think the sex come in as, okay, I'm talking to this person. Later on down the line is, are you ready? The girl may or may not be ready. So when she is ready and they do what they do, it's more the guy wants to try it raw, and the female, she may or may not know the consequence of doing it raw.
And she won't be on birth control.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So when he does it raw, it's that 50% you can get pregnant.
Right.
And they might be pregnant. And I feel like some parents, I'm not trying to say naive, but they look at it as, okay, my child, she never came to me about having sex, or I don't think my child is ready to have sex. So they lack teaching their child things about sex. Like if you don't use a condom, you can get pregnant, this, that, the third. So like for me in high school, my freshman year, I had to take health class, and they told us about pregnancy and X, Y, Z. And my mom, how school, it was good. What did you learn? Well, in this class, this, that, the third, and I told her about health class. And that's when she gave me the talk, like, I'm not telling you like to rush into it, but I'm letting you know when you are ready, let me know, or like You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then some students, they're like, I don't want to tell my mom that I'm having sex because it's not her business, or
Mhm.
so they sneak and do it, and then when you be sneaky about it, boom, that's what it is.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and it does say that we are going down the past 20 years. So it has been declining. So there's something that educators are doing better. Where it says U.S. teen pregnancy rate has been declining over the past 20 years, and birth rates are higher among Hispanic, Black, and compared to white adolescents.
I feel like the teen pregnancy is declining is because, males or females don't care. So they're catching HIV, STD, chlamydia, this, that, third. So it's like now when one person has it, that makes them think like, do you have it? Do you? Yeah, I might not mess with him because he might have it.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Right.
Okay, he can get checked, and the guy, why would I get checked? So
Right.
that's like, yeah.
And there is more access to abortion. Not to say that's a good form of birth control, but some people use it as birth control so they can go and have an abortion. So maybe that's another reason it's gone down in 20 years. And then, that risk factor, poverty. He doesn't give much else. Maybe it's in the book. So, like, you got to dig in there, see what's going on with that. Now, when there is teen pregnancy, there's a few slides on this about sex education, drug and alcohol use, and adolescent pregnancy, which I do want to dig into that a bit more Wednesday. But some of the consequences, and I'll start on this in early pregnancy. So it can be the infant can have low birth weight because they're short term. For the short-term consequences are that they have low birth weight or high infant mortality. The long-term is less education sometimes, behavioral and emotional issues, additional teen pregnancy. So sometimes two in the family have a teen pregnancy and mom and dad become grandparents at 36. And poverty because it is hard to finish education. So those are some of the consequences. For the mother, short-term birth complications, even mortality if they're too young, and then long-term, less education, low socioeconomic status, welfare, dependency, and more unstable relationships, or more unintended births. With the father, short-term, more involved than in the past. So with men, they are more involved with pregnancies, whereas before they'd run and hide. They still run and hide, but they're doing it less often, but tapers after the first year. And then face hostility from mothers, and they're not the decision maker, which probably comes true with abortion too, as a man doesn't have a say-so whether a woman has an abortion or not. And then long-term, there's low-paying jobs. Like, again, the education piece. So it's harder to finish your education, so it's harder to get the social work licensure and a job with a social work license and stuff. And we can actually dig into that more, as I wanted, as usual, to finish up a few 12 minutes early so we get half online and half in person. Did you have good access to this Paris Hilton thing? I want to see if I can drag it for you. Just make sure, that you're caught up on everything through here. And I know the grade book looks weird since midterm, but at least we still can all access everything through here. The most recent conversation is about the trauma with, Paris Hilton. So it looks like most of you guys already did that. So, and that's all I have for today. You have any questions or?
I think the piggyback off what the last slide was. I think you said mothers are less likely to finish school and stuff like that.
There is more funding though, so that could be turning around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I was gonna say I witnessed about 2 people that was pregnant during high school, and they had finished high school. Well, I don't know about the last one, but one of them I know she did finish high school, and she woke up, with the baby. Yeah, because she was still pregnant.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think we're getting more open to it and more supportive. Whereas in the past, they would ship them off to a convent. I swear, they would send these girls like to other family.
But I think the first girl I went with, when she was like in labor and stuff, she had to take time from school.
Uh huh.
And I believe, I don't really know her business like that,
Right.
but if I'm not mistaken, it was this school called Desert Rose. And it's like an adult school and it's like for the baggies and everything. I
Yeah.
believe she finished there
Uh huh.
or like she transferred schools because it was close to her house and she finished high school. But I know she did for sure finish high school.
Oh wow, in like Las Vegas or in Nevada.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. It's good to hear. Is I think that we are, as social workers, we got to be more supportive, more aware, get them the resources they need to still have the baby if they want to, and finish school if they want to, and go to college if they want to. So I think we've been better as social workers to get them everything.
And for the father, I think it depends. But with me, I witnessed that the father is more open.
Right. Right. Like kind of absentee-ish.
Mhm.
Right. Yep. I have kind of know. I mean, I even feel that way working 3 jobs to pay for my 2 kids because I'm gone like 40 some hours a week and I wish I was there more. But
Like I know there's some football players here, they have kids and they be here for football and I'm like,
right. Yeah.
Like I don't know their situation, but you know,
Right.
some of them might be in a child's life and
Right.
us holding them back is football. But
yeah, that is, it's, luckily we are a bit more supportive of this stuff nowadays. So that's the good thing about it, which is nice. So, well, cool. Thank you for checking in. We'll get more into this on Thursday. Oh no, Wednesday. Jeez, oh Pete's. Do you have any other classes with me? I can't remember. Are you
No.
just, because I teach 3 and there's one student in here that is in all 3 of my classes. I was like, dang, you're like, it must get boring because I have the same format for most of my classes. So, well, cool. Have a good middle of the week and I'll see you Wednesday.